Today's episode is brought to you by First National Bank, one of the country's most recognized brands and a bank synonymous with innovation. Now, over and above providing personal, private, business, commercial, and corporate banking services to millions of customers across the country, FNB has been a long-time partner to businesses across the spectrum. And importantly, they're equally committed to supporting the tech startup ecosystem in creating jobs, growing the economy, and establishing South Africa as a major player in tech innovation and investment. To find out more about how they do this and how they want to support your business, visit fnb.co.za. Welcome to the Startup Club podcast, where we share the journeys of invention, failure, resilience, and triumph of some of South Africa's foremost tech startup founders and investors. I'm Mathew, founder of Startup Club ZA, and on the show today, Ndabenhle Ngulube, co-founder of Pineapple Insurance, the South African insurtech in pursuit of building the country's most trusted digital insurance platform, and one that's fast becoming a household name through its highly memorable nationwide marketing efforts.
Because of that grit that I had, I'll just keep going and going and going, because I knew that at the end of the day, if I be consistent and I keep going with it and I don't stop and I practice, eventually that light would flick on.
According to recent figures quoted in TechCrunch, Africa's insurance market is worth over $68 billion in gross written premiums each year. And amazingly, South Africa makes up 70% of this market, with annual gross premiums of over $47 billion. However, only a fraction of personal insurance is actually sold without human intervention. But the pandemic changed how many South Africans consume insurance products, and while 28% of South African millennials are in the market for insurance, 60% of them would prefer communicating with their insurer via the internet. And this has led to the rise of several disruptive insurtechs in recent years. But when Ngulube co-founded what would become Pineapple in 2016, the idea of tech-enabled insurance was limited to mere price comparison, before having to engage with a call center agent thereafter. And since founding the business with co-founders Marnus, Mathew, and Sizwe, Pineapple has attracted more than $9 million in early-stage venture and grant capital from notable investors and mainstream insurers, alongside a host of other accolades. But it didn't start there. Ngulube was born and raised in Johannesburg in the early 90s. His mother was in recruitment and his father had built a lengthy career in reinsurance for several big-name multinationals. Alongside his identical twin brother, he had a pretty traditional upbringing until the sudden need to immigrate for his father's work would have a profound impact on his life forever.
So my early childhood can best be described as being filled with curiosity. Myself and my siblings were blessed enough to have parents who sort of embraced the curiosity that comes with childhood. They always allowed us to explore sort of the things that we're passionate about and to sort of dabble and get our hands dirty with those things. I remember when we're kids, our parents really encouraged us to do a lot of extracurricular activities. So for instance, my sister did a lot of dancing, she did a lot of ballet. My brother and I did a lot of pottery, painting, as well as golf. So it was really a childhood best summarized by being exposed to a lot of things, particularly things that are either in the sports or the creative arts side of things. Of course, there were sort of elements that involved sort of doing mathematical or science related things outside of school or whatnot. But for the most part, my parents really encouraged us to be creative, to stretch our minds, and really get our hands dirty with whatever we're interested in.
And what type of kid were you? Were you an extrovert? Were you an introvert? Were you that guy with loads of people around?
Oh man,
you?
I was an extreme introvert. That goes for me and my twin brother as well. So both of us were extremely shy, to the point where in a lot of our parents-teacher reports, at least up to the age of, let's say, 11, 12, one of the main points that kept on recurring in terms of the feedback from our teachers was that, these kids need to learn to speak out more and be more conversational, because right now they're as mute as a church mouse. So, and I remember vividly just being extremely shy and just being very withdrawn, and I was just very intimidated by a lot of things and a lot of people. So I really just kept inside and kept in my shell.
Sure.
But eventually I outgrew that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's not how you strike one when you meet you now, of course. But it is interesting to know how that personality evolves and changes over time, and especially what makes good maybe components for being an entrepreneur or a founder.
Exactly.
Tell me, were you quite enterprising? Were you that hustling kid who was starting little businesses, the lemonade stand, or was it pretty traditional?
So I wouldn't say I was, an enterprise sort of kid, nor would I say I was a traditional kid. I was a very creative kid. My brother and I used to dabble in a lot of things that are adjacent to the creative arts. So for instance, I remember when we first discovered Microsoft Paint as well as Microsoft Movie Maker. What we ended up doing was that we would go into Paint and then basically draw animations, frame by frame, and then basically save those as individual image files and then stitch those together on Movie Maker and basically make these short sort of animation films and, and a whole bunch of other stuff where we would make sort of, crafts and curios out of potatoes and, play with those and whatnot. So I wouldn't say I was very sort of, business minded as a kid, but I was extremely creative. I remember doing a lot of things creative and just, taking notes of, me being more inclined towards the creative side of things.
Sure. And when you were, does that translate into a career aspiration? So let's think about maybe primary school. Some kids want to be a fireman or a doctor.
Yeah.
I mean, did you have something in mind that you were like?
100%. Yeah, 100%. So for the longest time, especially when I was a kid, I was convinced that I was going to become a video game maker.
Sure.
Like I was sold on that. So, following the time when my brother and I were making these animation films, that's when we got exposed to, PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2. And we completely fell in love with that. And, we were convinced that, okay, we're going to get to the point where we're going to become video game makers. And we tried to teach ourselves how to sort of, model 3D images on the computer and whatnot, but it was quite difficult, especially at that age.
And it's early days.
Exactly, in its early days.
Early
And
software.
what made it harder was that at the time we're using dial-up internet, and the program at the time that was most suited for this was called, I believe it was called Maya, and it must have been about 900 megabytes in size at the time. And for dial-up
Which was
internet,
huge.
yeah,
Yes.
I mean for dial-up
Crazy.
internet, that's a joke. And yeah, so we just couldn't make that dream happen. But I have fond memories of wanting to become a video game maker when I was younger.
I see a lot of parallels with gamifying the tech business that you're currently building.
Exactly.
Right? So maybe you are coming full circle.
Maybe.
You go to primary school at Rivonia Primary, high school at Red Hill. Great schools, both of those. And then there's actually a bit of a disruptive moment, I guess, in your high school career. Your dad needs to take a position overseas. It results in the two of you needing to move to Europe for a short period of time. And I know you've shared with me offline that this was quite impactful, quite a pivotal moment in both of your lives.
Yeah.
And I'd love for you to just share how that framed maybe your outlook on the world.
Yeah, sure. So this happened at the end of 2005. So at the end of 2005 was when my twin brother and I completed grade 9. And this was December 2005. And January 2006 was when my family was meant to move overseas to Germany for the purposes of my dad taking up a 2-year contract at the company that he was working for at the time. So come January 2006, we pack up our bags and we move across the seas to Munich, Germany. But unbeknownst to me, the academic year for high schools in Germany, the academic year starts in around August, September, and it finishes around March, April. Yeah, March, April, May, around there. So you must remember getting there in January and me having finished grade 9 the previous December. That January, I was tasked with joining, my new classmates pretty much towards the end of grade 10.
Yes.
So my brother and I missed a significant portion of grade 10. And you have to understand that not only have we missed a significant portion of the year's curriculum, but there's a new language that you have to learn. You have to make friends from scratch. There's a new environment that you in general have to get used to.
And grade 10 in South Africa is the first year you've been able to pick subjects,
100%.
right? So, and start forming career trajectory.
Exactly.
So this is pretty momentous.
Exactly. So you can imagine my brother and I get to our new school, and then on the first day we're told, okay, we know you guys just finished grade 9, but now you guys have to join pretty much halfway through grade 10. Good luck. And so much so, on our first day, the first class, they were writing a test. So you can imagine, like,
Was it in German?
It was in French. It was
Okay, it
French.
was in
Yeah, so
French,
we took French as well. So it was a French test. So you can imagine, get into the classroom. Hey, I'm your teacher. Hi, nice to meet you. Nice to meet you guys. Okay, sit down and write this test. It's insane. But I think.
Did you speak any French in this instance?
Yeah, luckily, at Red Hill, I did French in grade 8 and grade 9, so I was able to at least transfer a bit of that knowledge across.
Sure.
But when I say this had a profound effect on, my outlook in life, this is because, at the time, I was faced with this massive task of having to sort of, catch up on all of the schoolwork that I'd missed, make new friends, learn the language to a point where I can at least be a functional person in society. And initially, our teachers, at least the new teachers there, they were convinced that we weren't going to make it. They actually wanted to drop us down a grade because the task, at least in their perspective, was just too daunting. But my dad, he's a very staunch sort of traditional boomer. He kept saying, nope, there's no way you're going to drop these kids. They'll make a plan. They'll make it happen. So my parents, they ended up enrolling us in extra lessons, but like literally on a militant sort of schedule, whereby I'd finish school at around 2, then it's the journey back from school would be like an hours long bus ride, get home at like 3:30, and then eat for about 30 minutes up until 4. From 4, head over to the extra lessons, which will start at 5, and then, do extra lessons from like, 5 up until like 9 in the evening, and then come home, do homework, sleep, and then repeat. So literally we're doing extra lessons nearly every day. And, I always joke with my brother now that at that age, when we were about 15, 16, you're working sort of grown adult hours, like,
Yes.
So I think one skill that I really walked away with from that whole process was grit, and the belief that there's nothing that I can't do. Something might seem like an obstacle now, but with enough determination and consistency, you can overcome it. And so much so, within that 3-month period from when we started to the end of that, 10th grade year, my brother and I completely caught up with our curriculum, and we pretty much aced that school year. So
Amazing.
it was quite I think looking back at the end of that year, it's almost as if, you feel as if you're somebody who's climbed to the top of Everest, and you look back down and you're like, wow, it seemed impossible beforehand, but we're able to make it happen.
It's an uncommon challenge at that age. But I think in hindsight, you must be looking back and saying, man, what could discipline and
and
the fruits of consistency.
Exactly, and I won't even lie. It's sort of low key traumatic as well to go through something like that.
Sure,
it's very traumatic, but I think once you go through it and you're able to put the lessons into perspective, that's when you're able to sort of see the lesson for what it was, and take that as a nugget of knowledge that you carry with you for the rest of your life.
Wisdom of age, man.
Exactly.
So you do grade 11 as well.
Yeah.
So grade 10, grade 11, you end up coming back to South Africa to finish matric.
Yeah.
Of course, more learned, more wise.
100%.
I think a whole bunch more probably experienced than most South African matriculants. And what kind of student were you? I mean, of course, by now you had this almost militarized schedule. But were you good academically?
Yeah. So by the time my brother and I got back from Germany, I think the schooling system in SA was a breeze for us. So, we enrolled into AP Maths. We started competing in the Math Olympiads here in SA. So, the schooling system in SA was, I'd say, lighter than what it was in Germany. So we really enjoyed our time back here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me, you finished matric, strong academia, right? Good results, I imagine. You now have the world at your feet. You've also got some international experience, which is quite rare for most matriculating students.
Yeah.
What do you decide to do with your life?
So at the time, once my brother and I finished, grade 12, our older sister, she was studying at the University of Cape Town, and she was studying to become a chartered accountant. So mind you, at the time, my brother and I didn't really know what a chartered accountant was or what a chartered accountant does, but we just knew that, hey, this is what our older sister is doing, and this is what our parents want us to be doing. So let's do that. So yeah, I went to the University of Cape Town, with the goal of studying towards becoming a chartered accountant. So went through the whole sort of accounting curriculum. And I very quickly realized at the time that accounting and auditing wasn't something that, I was passionate about at all. I couldn't see myself having a fully fledged and fulfilling career in that field.
Yes.
And I very quickly realized that, okay, cool. If I want to sort of avoid finding myself in a situation whereby I'm unfulfilled and I'm not really enjoying what I'm doing, now is the time to pivot. So I really went into overdrive in terms of finding alternative career paths. Exactly. So I started experimenting with a lot of things at the time. Yeah.
You've always struck me as someone that is motivated by curiosity, motivated by creativity, and often people don't believe that those two are paralleled with business, with entrepreneurship necessarily, in a traditional formality sense. But you also go down this road, and you shared with me offline that you had some potential aspirations in music.
Yeah.
And this had started in Europe and then obviously evolved slightly too. And I'd love it if you shared maybe just a little bit of that, because before we get into this career pivot, you did have some other interests that you were exploring.
Yeah. So, as you said, during our time in Germany, my brother and I really started to become passionate about music. And that's when I formed a strong passion for music production. I was exposed to a tool called Fruity Loops while I was there, and I really, jumped headfirst into learning everything about Fruity Loops. And, I started to become really decent at, music production. So much so that by the time I got to varsity, myself and my twin brother and an older family friend of ours, his name is Kudzi Chikumbu. He's actually the global head of creator marketing at TikTok. He's based in LA now. So we formed a writing collective at UCT, at UCT at the time. So would basically sort of I'd produce like the backing track, and then my brother and Kudzi would basically write lyrics. So they would write songs and would basically try to sell those songs online. Yeah, so we'd basically go on to like Twitter and basically find very famous and popular songwriters and jump in their DMs and try to sell them these songs. And I think the thing that was, I'd say, very smart about what we did back then was that Twitter was fairly new. And what you found was that if you went onto Wikipedia and Googled your favorite song at the time, so for instance, if you Googled Justin Bieber Baby, you'd get a full list of whoever got the writing credits on that song. And then you'd search for that person on Twitter. And because Twitter was so new, that oftentimes only have a handful of followers, so like 50 to 100 followers. So
they were accessible.
Exactly, extremely accessible. So if you sent them a DM, they were going to see it. So we literally started to spam a lot of people with these propositions.
And how did it go?
I mean, unfortunately, we never got any placements, but we sort of started to built a lot of relationships and friendships with very popular and famous songwriters at the time. And I think for me, that really opened up my eyes towards the power and the reach of the internet and social platforms.
And I would probably add also, again, one thing to be curious, it's one thing to act on curiosity. And that's quite an audacious thing to try, by the way. I mean, even fresh graduates, firstly, producing music takes its own inclinations. And secondly, going out and reaching out to some what are actually quite famous folks. And I think it's that boldness sometimes, and sometimes just trying and experimenting, right? That also feeds what we end up doing with ourselves vocationally and the businesses we found.
And I think the interesting thing about that chapter was that when we were reaching out to people, it never felt like it was a scary or bold thing to do. It was always out of the space of, okay, what's the worst that can happen? Them just ignoring us. So we were literally just having fun at the time. And it was never scary at all. And I think it really opened up my eyes in terms of, the whole concept of what's the worst that can happen, just do it.
Amazing lessons. Amazing lessons. So just back to home, you're in this position now where you were doing the CA route. You're clearly looking at pivoting this, not quite sure what next. and then a friend of yours
Yeah.
introduces you to the world of coding
Yeah,
and
100%.
development.
Yeah,
Maybe talk to us about that, because obviously
Yeah,
that
sure.
became just your sole focus, right? You just
100%.
fell in love with that. Maybe tell us about that.
Yeah, so I had I'm still friends with him today.
Sure.
We lived in the same res, Kopano, in Cape Town. So he was studying information systems,
Okay.
and he had, access to a bunch of textbooks, a bunch of coding textbooks. And he always used to share with me a lot of the exciting projects that they're working on as part of their curriculum. And I very quickly gained a very keen interest in sort of what they were building, how they were building it, what technologies were you using to build these things. And coincidentally, at the time, Facebook was gearing up for the IPO. So for me, the whole concept of a platform that a bunch of students built in their dorm room, gaining so much success and traffic to the points where they can IPO, that concept for me was insane. I immediately knew that, okay, whatever these guys did to build this platform, surely this thing must be the future. And that really spurred me to sort of dive head first and sort of learn as much as I could about coding. So I'd borrow these textbooks from my friend. And I won't lie to you, in the beginning, I'd really understood nothing about what was written in those textbooks. But, because of that grit that I had, I'll just keep going and going and going, because I knew that at the end of the day, I mean, if I just, if I be consistent and I keep going with it and I don't stop and I practice, eventually that light would flick on. So I started off with, going through these textbooks that my friend had given me. And then I was fortunate enough to discover, it was a new startup at the time. It's pretty big today, Code Academy, codeacademy.com. They were literally just a tiny sort of startup at the time. All of the features on that platform were free. So I literally signed up and I started diving headfirst into that. I'd literally do it every single day, before lectures, during my lunch breaks, after lectures. And then I'd go back home. And unfortunately, I didn't have a computer at the time. So there was an internet cafe that was across the road from where I stayed.
Were a thing.
Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
yes.
So I'd go to the computer cafe after eating dinner. I'd get there maybe at around 8:30 p.m. and I'd stay there until like 11:30 midnight, and then go back home and sleep and go to lectures the next day.
It sounds like a very healthy obsession.
Yeah, no, and the thing is, like, it literally didn't even feel like work for me at the time.
Yeah.
I'll actually show you. I always carry in my bag. I keep it wherever I go. I have this book. It's a notebook where I'd literally write all the content that was on sort of Code Academy.
Amazing.
Because I didn't have a computer, so I just write all the content down just for me to read later on.
I'm gonna see
So
that.
I'll show you. I think I have it in my bag.
I think what's worth mentioning for our listeners is that even though you had pivoted interest and were now dedicating a lot of time, you were actually picking up this, for instance, the Code Academy program, and doing that alongside finishing your undergrad.
Yeah.
So you were still doing a tax and CA-centric undergrad. You do also go into tax postgrad. So just to show, maybe illustrate the capacity that you were having to find.
Yeah.
And hence why you were doing it before studies, post studies, finding every opportunity to do it. I think it's such a great illustration of really just grit and chasing the thing that you want most.
Yeah. And I must just add that sort of the thing of me still balancing sort of my studies, I probably owe that to the whole African parents thing of I didn't send you to university just for you to, start playing with computers.
Yeah.
So I knew I had to finish my undergrad and postgrad, or else my parents would have flamed me up.
Sure. Well, yeah. I mean, I'll reserve any comment about parents in general, but I think for good reason. And now you find yourself a graduate plus having this new interest, and ironically, you're building a pretty big business on the back of that, playing around with code, right?
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool to see this thing come full circle. You do graduate, and tell us about first job. First job out of varsity, big prospects now. You've got a couple of interests. You've qualified in one thing and obviously have interest in another.
Yeah.
What does that translate to?
So I'll just take a quick step back to my honors year.
Sure.
So during my honors year, I was doing my honors in tax. And the way that the tax program at UCT was set up at the time was that you would only have 2 lectures a week, but you'd still have to focus on your thesis.
Sure.
So at the time in Cape Town, so this was 2014. At the time in Cape Town, they opened up the first coding boot camp. It's still running today, Codex Academy. It's ran by Andre Vermeulen, Cara Turner. There was a third founder, Elizabeth Gold, but then she moved on. Actually, there was a fourth founder as well, the ex-CEO of FMB, Michael Jordan. Yeah, Michael Jordan. So he was one of the co-founders of that bootcamp as well. So this bootcamp opened in Cape Town. It was the first of its kind in Cape Town. It was a full-time bootcamp whereby if you're selected to take part in it, you'd have to go to the offices Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. And basically for the duration of the whole day, you'd work on sort of learning new coding concepts, new technologies, solving problems. There'd be sort of weekly challenges that you'd have to do, and then eventually present them at the end of the week. So, I found out about this boot camp through Facebook. I saw an ad there on Facebook, and then I applied for it, and luckily I was accepted into it, and I managed to juggle that and my studies. And towards the end of the boot camp, that's when I actually had to start to think about, okay, cool, I'm about to finish the boot camp. I'm about to graduate from tax honors. What am I going to do next year? And I had applied to a few places, including PwC, and luckily one of the founders at Codex knew the founder of Platform 45. So they put me in touch with them as well, and I went to have a discussion with them to find out more about what they're doing at their dev shop. And I really believed in their vision. I really enjoyed what they were doing. So they offered me an internship. So I was like, okay, cool. I can put this tech stuff, articles on hold. Sure. And let me, dabble with this internship. I believe the internship was about 2 months long or so. So then I did that, and I really enjoyed it. And when PwC came with a final offer, I turned it down and decided to go head first into the software engineering career path.
Amazing. You end up spending 2 years, was it?
Yeah, just under 2 years.
Working your way up to a junior full stack dev. So getting a lot of competency. And obviously the benefit of working for a great agency like a P45 is just you work on so many projects, right? And
exactly.
You see so much scope.
100%.
I think that probably equips you to be a great CTO if you're inclined that way, right? Or a great dev lead if you're inclined that way. Should you want to found a business?
100%.
I of course, there's now this move from what could have quite easily stayed a very traditional dev career, to the inclinations of what would become a venture. Although its first iteration wasn't really a venture, right?
Yeah.
Of what would become Pineapple. So we're in 2016 now.
Yeah.
And I would love for you just to talk about those initial first moments. And it all starts with really this WhatsApp you get from a friend about an innovation competition of all things, right? You're going about your daily job. I'm sure you're working on a project at the time. Maybe share with our audience a little 100%. Bit about that.
So at the time I was, a junior developer at Platform 45. And I'd really started to find my feet, and I'm settled into the role. I was comfortable with the technology stacks that we're working with and so forth. And a friend of mine, she sent me a link on WhatsApp to this competition. It was an entry form to this competition, an innovation competition. And this competition was being hosted by a German reinsurance company called Hanover Reinsurance. In essence, the whole premise of the competition was that they wanted to harbor local talents, disruptive talent in the insurance space, and basically, give that talent a space and opportunity to find pockets of innovation and disruption in either the short-term or long-term insurance space. Amazing. And then eventually, back, those individuals with the hopes of eventually forming a fully fledged either short-term or long-term.
And to clarify here, I know that your father was in insurance and reinsurance for many years,
100%.
Several decades before he retired. Did you have an insurance inclination?
Not at all.
Did this interest you? Did the industry?
Not at all.
At the time, again, now maybe it's a little bit sexier to be in the insurtech space, but insurance has always been one of those really big, old, archaic industries.
100%. I wouldn't even lie. At the time, insurance was the last career that I had in mind. And in fact, it wasn't even featured on my top 100 list of career paths. So how I found myself in this industry is, I can only describe it as the stars aligning.
Thanks for listening. We're going to take a quick break, I'm Mathew Marsden, and this is the Startup Club podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by First National Bank, one of the country's most recognized brands and a bank synonymous with innovation. Now, over and above providing personal, private, business, commercial, and corporate banking services to millions of customers across the country, FNB has been a long-time partner to businesses across the spectrum. And importantly, they're equally committed to supporting the tech startup ecosystem in creating jobs, growing the economy, and establishing South Africa as a major player in tech innovation and investment. To find out more about how they do this and how they want to support your business, visit fnb.co.za. So presumably post receiving this WhatsApp, you decide to enter this competition.
Yeah, 100%.
And what was quite interesting to me is they actually pair you up with two individuals.
Yeah.
And these individuals actually, you'd never met them.
Yeah,
I think
not
that's
at
what's
all.
important. This was Matt and this was Marnus.
100%,
yes? Who go, for the listeners, relevance, they are two of the co-founders of Pineapple Insurance, but you've never met these guys.
Yeah.
So really it's probably quite awkward to be paired up with strangers in
Yeah.
a comp, right? And like you mentioned, this competition gives you license to really spend 6 months trying to figure out how you're going to disrupt the insurance space. Maybe talk to me about how that evolves from entering a competition, meeting these what will become co-founders, but at the time probably just competition partners.
Yeah, sure.
And how that starts evolving into what might actually become a viable business.
Cool. So the way that the competition was set up was that the Hanover offices in Berlin, Boston, Dublin, and Johannesburg, all four of them were tasked with putting together two teams of 3 individuals for each of those cities. So each of these 4 cities had 2 teams of 3 individuals who would basically compete in this competition representing the respective Hanover office from their city. So myself, Marnus, and Mathew, we signed up for this competition individually. None of us knew each other from a bar of soap. And basically how they went about putting the teams together was they looked at people who had complementary skills. So, I was coming from a tech / dev point of view. Marnus was coming from a accounting / finance and a bit of insurance point of view. And Matt was coming from an actuarial / data point of view. So 100%. So they really looked towards putting together teams of individuals who would have skill sets that could complement each other and work well together towards creating a new disruptive insurance provider. So the 3 of us were fortunate enough to be selected to represent the Joburg team. So we put together, we were provided with office space as well as salaries for a 6-month period. And basically, they onboarded us with respect to design thinking and how to use design thinking to sort of find pockets of opportunity in an industry. And that's exactly what we did. We followed the design thinking methodology, and we started to sort of pinpoint the pain points in traditional insurance. And then we set about trying to capitalize on those pain points. And that's how we came up with the V1 concept of Pineapple.
Amazing. What was the dynamic like between the 3 of you? Again, you were strangers.
Yeah.
And was it immediately getting along? Was it a little bit of ego? Was it just, hey guys, we're in this, let's have some fun? Or was it, we're going to actually build something significant?
So the amazing thing for us as a team is that immediately we got along. And I think what really helped us do that was that the 3 of us, we think alike. And B, we are solution orientated. And if you are somebody who's solution orientated, you tend not to allow ego to get in the way of getting to a solution, because you understand that if somebody else can justify a better solution than what you can, it's not to say that you are inadequate or that you suck at what you're doing. It just means that for the best of the business or for the best of the situation that you're in the moment, this solution will probably be more fruitful for the overall goal. And if you can sort of take a step back and see things like that, then you'll tend to work well as a team. So the 3 of us are basically sort of built like that, whereby we are solution orientated. Sure. We are open to healthy debate. we never get egos involved in anything, because we know how to approach each other. We know how to have a conversation that's respectful and one that makes everybody around the table feel heard.
Sure.
And I think it's extremely rare to have three people like that come
Absolutely.
together in a team. So, I always thank the stars in the heavens for putting the three of us together.
Yeah,
And funny
those
enough,
are, sorry, go ahead.
no, sorry.
Yeah.
Funny enough, so at the end of the competition, all the other teams had some sort of team falling out, except for our team. We were the only team that, in fact, we didn't have a single argument whatsoever throughout the entire process.
And I think that might be the case until this day, right? I mean,
Yeah,
I think you've
100%.
mentioned to me that
Yeah,
you've
we've-
had healthy debate.
We've never
but
had an argument
never
at all.
what one would even remotely consider an argument.
We've
right?
never
'Cause
had
it's
a
for the benefit.
yeah.
of the
We've
business.
had healthy debates, but we've never had an argument whatsoever.
Yeah, amazing. And the symptoms of a much more mature business.
Yeah.
All right, which I think is probably been a key factor in success to date. Talking about version 1, and this is kind of V1 that you go into this competition with you really identified two key issues. The one is difficulty around access. Short-term insurance incredibly difficult, especially for standalone items.
Yeah.
And trust.
Yeah.
Insurance companies don't want to pay me; they're almost the enemy. And so you guys had come up with an initial concept. You fly to Germany to present this alongside, I'm sure, the other country teams.
Yeah.
And you actually lose the competition.
Yeah. We didn't place at all.
Wow.
We were convinced that our concept was like rock solid and bulletproof, and we went out there and we gave it our all. But unfortunately, we didn't win. And I must say, it was quite a blow for us, because we had put so much behind the concept, and we really believed in what we're trying to achieve. And I think this is where another godsend comes in that the CEO of Hanover Insurance Africa at the time, he was a strong mentor of ours. He still is a mentor of ours today. But he was an incredibly strong advocate of what we're trying to do. So much so that, when we didn't place at all in that competition, he took us aside. He took us to a boardroom in the offices at Hanover, Germany. And he said, "Hey, listen, guys, I know you guys didn't place the way you wanted to place in this competition, but I strongly believe in what you guys are trying to achieve. So don't worry, when we fly back to Joburg, I'm going to try my best to see if I can help you guys out and maybe give you additional space and time for you to perfect this concept. And hopefully we can actually bring this thing to life." And that lifeline that he gave us, because at the end of that competition, you must remember that, that could have been just us going our separate ways and being,
cool exercise.
Yeah,
guys,
cool story, guys.
Yeah.
We tried. But
Yeah.
I think what his name is Achim Klenet, what he did for us at that time was, it's nothing short of a godsend.
Amazing. Power of knowing the right people and good relationships, right?
Yeah, and I guess the power of people, of having somebody who believes in you, that can really be the
Chief
difference.
evangelists
You know what I'm
almost,
saying?
yeah.
It can really be the difference between, you getting somewhere or you not taking off at all.
And so Jan 2017, with his endorsement, you kick off on really now a proof of concept.
100%,
And
yeah.
proper POC. And you make so much progress within 4 months that you actually are in a position to raise some capital.
Yeah.
And I'd love for you just to share with the audience, because obviously a number of founders are going to listen to this. They're going to come up with concepts. They're going to have great ideas. Talk to us about how you went about raising that first round of capital and what kind of led to that.
Yeah, so I must give a disclaimer in that our seed raise was unique in the sense that because of us having gone through the Hanover competition, in the wider Hanover group, there was already an understanding of what we're trying to achieve. The concept wasn't foreign to a lot of the people in the company, in particular to the investment arm of Hanover, which is Lirius Holdings. We actually sort of had a lot of presentations to them during the conceptual stage of Pineapple, just to sort of get assistance in making the concept bulletproof. So they were fully aware of what we're trying to achieve, and we had built a bit of rapport with the team. So it sort of allowed us to have, I wouldn't say a foot in the door, but a toe in the door. And I think the catalyst that really helped fast track that initial capital raise was them seeing how hungry we were for this opportunity because we were working out of the Hanover offices at the time. They gave us a desk, probably the size of maybe half of this table, and we had like 3, chairs on each side. But we were working pretty much next door to the investment arm of Lyris, so they literally saw us coming in every day early and leaving late, just trying to perfect this concept. And then the second thing was we put together money of our own. The 3 of us as co-founders, we put together money of our own. We registered the business, and we started to use that money to sort of, build a bit of the branding. We bought the domain name, anything that we could do to sort of get the wheels rolling.
And it also shows intent, right?
Exactly,
It shows
100%.
Really got skin in the game.
100%. So I think, our first investors seeing that really gave them a lot of confidence that we were extremely serious about what we were trying to achieve.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Lyris do end up going to invest a few million rand.
Yeah.
Certainly not enough to build an insurance business, right? But a few million rand to back the concept in what would, I guess, be a pre-seed round. In 2018, you actually end up launching your first app.
Yeah.
This is now the formalized result of all of this effort and all of this process. And talk to us about just version 1. Originally, it wasn't called Pineapple.
Yeah,
so maybe maybe first tell us about that, and secondly, what did version 1 look like?
Yeah. So initially, the name that we were going to go to market with was Amity. So in essence, what the word Amity is, and it was spelled Amyti. It's a play on the French word amity, which basically means like friendship group or, some sort of collective of friends, an affinity group, if you will. So we thought that was a really great name. But what ended up happening was that, and this was a blessing in disguise, is that it must have been about 3 months before we were tabled to launch, somebody decided it would be a smart idea just to double check if, does anybody have the trademark to this Amity name? Any FSP, does any FSP have a trademark to this Amity name? And unfortunately, there was an FSP in Pretoria called Amity.
Yeah.
So us being the young and polite gents that we were, and I guess we still are very polite, we decided to draft an email and sort of, request permission from these Amity guys if we could sort of still use the name even though they have the trademark. And they pretty much told us that, no, we're not going to allow you to do that. If you do that, we will sue you guys. So we very quickly found ourselves in a sort of quagmire where we had to come up with a completely new brand name in a matter of months before going live to market. And I say it was a blessing in disguise because I think the name that we finally settled on, Pineapple, is light years better than the Amity name. I think as a brand, it has its own 2 feet. It's memorable. You just can't compare the two. It's like night and day.
It's I wonder how many founders are driven by domain names.
Yeah,
in their companies, right?
Yeah.
And trademarks.
Yeah.
But maybe a question for another day. With that raise and obviously with that launch, you'd now hired a few devs. You had a little bit of customer support behind the team as well. Talk to me about launch day, because this is, if you would, for me, a little bit of startup founding folklore. I think in a couple of years, people are going to talk about this as a great anecdote or story as to how you can go about launching a tech business, which is typically quite hard. The capex is high to find and carve out space online in terms of search, really difficult, and especially in the insurance space where, of course, marketing spend is amongst the highest of any industry with what would be perceived competitors. To break through that noise is quite hard. So I'd love you to talk to us about launch day and how you guys managed to kind of
day zero
buck that trend a little bit.
Yeah, so I'll first answer your previous question in terms of what did the product look like on day zero. I'll answer it by saying there's a quote that I heard from somebody in the startup space. It must have been a talk that I was listening to where they said, if on the day when you go to market for the first time, if your product is one that you aren't embarrassed of at all, it means you waited too long. So that V1, product that we shipped,
I'm sure that's Paul Graham or Reid Hoffman.
It sounds one of them, I'm sure.
Okay.
Yeah. So literally V1 was basically a product that was held together by sellotape.
Yeah.
It was just, yeah, it was a mess. It was a disaster. The user journey was buggy. Users would get kicked out of the app. Occasionally. It was just was a mess. But I think it did what it needed to do for the time. It was enough to prove the concept of what we wanted to get across as the pineapple brand. So I'm very buggy, but I think it was enough to prove the concept and let people know that, hey, this is what we stand for as a short-term insurance provider. But on day zero, we knew that if we wanted to get people's attention, we had to do something completely left field. So what we ended up doing was that we went to the fruit market in Joburg CBD, and we purchased about 20,000 pineapples, the fruits, fresh pineapples. Then we also procured 20,000 sort of branded plastic bags that would put these pineapples into. And then we went to the University of Pretoria, and there was a student there who had the company whereby he would rally together students that you could basically pay for promotion purposes. So we worked with them to get a bunch of students who would basically be based in different depots at various intersections, and they'd essentially hand out these pineapples in this branded plastic bag with the pineapple brand, with a bit of a description as to who we are as a company. And immediately that got people talking.
Sure.
You can imagine, who are these people handing out pineapples
it's
across intersections in Joburg, Pretoria, and Cape Town? Like, who are these guys? And I'll never forget it that on that day, I was just driving around the various depots just to sort of get a sense of how everything is going. Are all the students fine? Are they pushing the numbers? Are people taking the pineapples? And during this particular drive, I was listening to the radio at the same time, Power FM. And at that very moment, the topic of the show was insurance companies, and how insurance companies pretty much can't be trusted because, they take all your premiums, but they never pay out claims. So I saw an opportunity in that moment, and I picked up my cell phone and I called in on the radio station. I was like, hey, listen, guys, I'm listening on the show that you guys are currently speaking about short-term insurance. We just launched a new short-term insurance provider. I've got a bunch of pineapples with our branding in the booth. Can I come drop them off at the studio? And they thought I was joking. And they're like, okay, yeah, you can come drop them off. But they didn't take me seriously. Then I drove to the radio station, and I actually pulled up there, and I gave them 2 boxes full of pineapples, branded pineapples. And they were so blown away about that they immediately put me on air in that very moment and gave me about 15 to 20 minutes to talk about pineapple. They asked me about the business and so forth. So that's another one of, it's an ode to my belief of what's the worst that can happen by you just, trying something.
Yeah, an amazing story, and I'm grateful that you share that. Of course, at the time now, there are some other insurtechs also popping up, right? And I know that you've spoken about the fact that that's not necessarily about competition. It's actually brought more credibility to the insurtech space.
100%.
Which I think has been great. And you've seen that. I think people are far more trusting of the South African insurtech scene, and a lot of these new businesses pioneering new ways of doing things. 2019, you want to start, because again, Pineapple's initially focused really on item by item,
100%
short-term insurance, right?
Yeah, app-based.
App-based, very importantly. We can stress that app-based. And but obviously one of the biggest underwriting lines in this country is in the car insurance space. And so 2019, you want to start looking at car insurance. You also raise a second round of capital. 2019, 2020. I believe that was from Old Mutual and E4E, which is a really well-respected venture capital company in South Africa. And this is all with the endeavor to now fuel Pineapple 2.0, move into a different and start expanding maybe this full suite of insurance products. And of course, as you're doing all of this is just before COVID. Yeah. And no one knows what's about to happen. Talk to us about this, because I know that was a pretty, I imagine, a pretty stressful couple of months.
Yeah, no, it definitely was. And just a clarification. So that second round, that's when Edge Growth came on board via the CISA fund. Yeah, no problem. So yeah, it was that was a very interesting time. So as you mentioned, at the time we're only selling item by item insurance, app based. So you could insure your cell phone, your tablet, jewelry and whatnot. And it's a very interesting line of business because at the time the general consensus was that item by item insurance wasn't profitable at all. Not only are the premium sizes extremely small compared to motor insurance premiums, but the risk itself and the occurrence of loss events is much higher. You can think about how often people drop their cell phones and crack the screen or have cell phones stolen, and if you compare sort of the value of the premium that you're paying for the cell phone versus the replacement cost of it, if
It's
you don't know
almost
what
a
you're
loss
doing,
leader.
yeah, exactly.
Insurance,
You know what I'm
right?
saying. If you don't know what you're doing, you can very quickly get your hands burnt. But fortunately for us, we were able to find the pockets in that industry, in that line of business where we're able to run for the most part, profitably. And but we very quickly realized that as a sustainable business, we wouldn't be able to run forever, just focused on this line of business alone. We needed to get to the golden nuggets as soon as possible, and the golden nugget being motor insurance. And our underwriter at the time was Compass Insurance. So they are a short-term outfit linked to the Hanover Re Group. And, I must extend a massive thank you and gratitude to the guys at Compass Insurance because, they were the ones who put their hands up to be our underwriter when nobody else wanted to hear about the Pineapple story. So without Compass Insurance, there would be no Pineapple. So we'll always be grateful to the guys there at Compass Insurance. But that's when we were put in touch with the guys at Old Mutual. Yep. And they were very keen to sort of explore this Pineapple concept, not only in the item by item insurance, but also in the motor insurance space. So then we eventually we shifted our book over to them, and we started selling motor insurance.
Amazing. And now, in order to do that, of course, I understand rather, you launched that really at the start of 2020.
Yeah, 100%.
And of course, now this is 1 month before COVID hits.
Yeah.
So talk to us. I mean, you've put loads of effort and new capital behind launching this new, what is effectively a version 2 of the business.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? A lot riding on this. And then the world comes to a halt.
Yeah.
Talk to us about that season. How did Pineapple get through it? Of course, now your focus is on cars. And mobility is down to zero.
You know what I'm saying? People are working from home.
How does the business survive all of that?
So you're right. It was an extremely stressful time for us because here we were. We had put in so much hours of work to get this perfect motor insurance product rolled out. We finally launched it, and we were basically expecting to knock the lights out with it. But things didn't necessarily happen that way. As you said, COVID hit. People started working from home. People weren't driving, therefore people started scaling back on the motor insurance. So it was an extremely difficult time for us. The silver lining in the clouds, however, was that just before COVID, we had taken part in the Hartford Accelerator in Connecticut in the States. So Mathew, one of our co-founders, was based in Hartford, Connecticut, and he was basically going through this program. And as a result of being in that program, he was put into contact with a bunch of the guys at an insurance company in the States called Travelers Insurance. So Travelers Insurance, they do short-term and long-term insurance in the States. Vehicle insurance, life insurance.
Business.
It's a massive business. It's an incredibly large business. So they liked the Pineapple way of insuring because up until that point, they were following traditional channels to sell their policies, and they really wanted to start pivoting towards the whole self-service model of insurance, which is what we were doing at Pineapple. So we eventually got into an agreement with them whereby we white labeled our app and basically gave them the rights to use the app, of course, in exchange for like a licensing fee and development fees as well. But they basically started selling their item by item insurance using a white label version of the Pineapple app. And the money that we were receiving from them really kept us afloat and kept us going throughout that time. So it was a massive blessing in disguise at the time.
Almost serendipitous, right?
You know what I'm saying?
These things that are coming to the rescue at times,
Mm.
but pretty incredible that they are. Of course, that does offset some of the revenue you anticipated
Yeah.
you would make, and some of it maybe that you were losing.
Yeah.
The wool starts coming out of that season in 2020, start 2021.
Yeah.
Not only are things hoping to get back to normal, but you also have quite a big realization, and maybe a frustrating realization, around a pivot the business needs to make.
100%.
Because for the longest time you'd marketed app-based insurance.
Yeah.
And then you actually have a bit of a revelation. Maybe share that very quickly with, and some of the lessons rather.
Yeah, sure. So when we rolled out our motor insurance offering, it was app-based only. So the only way for you to get a quote, the only way for you to insure your vehicle was to download the Pineapple app, which means you going onto the App Store, downloading the app, creating an account, navigating to the motor flow, and then providing your vehicle details, and then eventually seeing a quote, and then if you're happy with that, you'd enact the policy. One thing that we didn't realize was that when it comes to item by item insurance, so for instance, your cell phone or your smartwatch, if you compare that to the value of your vehicle, it's night and day. Your vehicle is, many times more valuable to you than your smartwatch or your cell phone. Therefore, you're more inclined to experiment with new insurance providers when it comes to these small ticket items, right? But when it comes to your vehicle, you want to make sure that, okay, if I insure this thing, I want to make sure that, I know what all the terms and conditions are. I know all the terms of my cover. What am I covered for? What's excluded from my cover, and so forth. So we believe that going the app-only approach and going down this route in a way whereby the user interface and the user experience is tailored for ease of use, we believe that that was enough to get people across the line. But what we very quickly realized was that, using a mobile app to try achieve this, there's just way too many friction points. As I mentioned, somebody has to go to the App Store, download it, create an account. Already then, like, the drop-off is insane. I mean, the people who otherwise would have gotten a quote, once you present them with all these friction points, they're just going to go to the next easier provider. So then we finally realized that, guys, we need to sort of rethink this idea that we had, that app first, mobile app first, is the way to go. We might need to can that and actually pivot and go responsive mobile first, as well as desktop. And that's what we did. It was a hard pill to swallow, because what we really fell in love with when it comes to the mobile app was that picture first approach. We snap a picture of what you want to insure, and then the sexy AI basically categorizes what you took a picture of, and it says, hey, you just took a picture of a VW Polo. We were really in love with that solution, but we very quickly realized that you can't fall in love with your solution. You have to fall in love with the problem. And by sort of taking a step back and reframing the problem like that, we actually realized that, okay, guys, this approach isn't going to work. We need to drop that and go down this route. And that's exactly what we did. So in December of 2020, leading into January of 2021, we all canceled our leave, and we said, hey guys, no one here is taking leave. We have a month and a half to ideate, design, code, test, and ship an entire motor insurance flow for web. And that's exactly what we did. And we launched it on...
Busiest December of your life.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Busiest December of my life. And we launched it in January, the 20th of January, I believe. And it's actually become our strongest platform for sales. In fact, sales on the app pale compared to the sales that we get via our web platform.
It's such a wonderful lesson, I think, and it's one that I've even had to learn in my own tech businesses, where we do just fall in love with things and the way that we think, and also we have to be open to those things changing. Even our users telling us as it changes, right? They might respond one way, but to be iterative and dynamic and be willing to pivot, I think it's such great wisdom for the listeners. Of course, since the start of 2021, Pineapple has only grown in notoriety, specifically in the last 6 months. And again, you've shared some stories around real left field marketing efforts, garnering some real virality around that, I think. But what you'll now be known for are these incredibly funny, incredibly memorable nationwide billboard campaigns. Although that's slightly more traditional advertising,
Yeah.
right, in that sense, what was kind of the pin drop around why go that route, maybe? And of course, tell us about what that's done for the business
Yeah,
in
sure.
terms of numbers, maybe.
Sure. So before we launched our out of home campaign, we were doing fairly well on digital. I'm sure at the time you would recall seeing a lot of pineapple ads
Sure,
on
absolutely.
Facebook, Instagram, and so forth. But the honest truth about digital marketing is that the reach that you get there compared to what you get from a billboard, I mean, you can't compare the two, especially if you do if you execute at least your billboard marketing, if you execute it well. And the one thing that I didn't realize until I had to see it for myself was that there's something that speaks to credibility when it comes to a massive rollout of a billboard campaign. The brand resonance that you get and the credibility that you build as a brand, you'll really struggle to get the same sort of outcomes just from a digital only marketing effort.
Interesting.
So much so that initially when we were ideating going out of home, above the line, my initial thinking when it came to billboards was, okay, that's quite old school, but the results have been incredible. I mean, since within the first 2 months of launching our first billboard campaign, at least, we saw traffic increase by about 2,000% to our websites, which is incredible. We had never seen those sort of numbers via digital channels at all.
Yeah.
By digital marketing channels at all. So there's something about billboards where, especially in the South African market, it just works, especially if you execute it well, coherently and consistently. It just works, and it's been a blessing ever since.
And you've subsequently obviously released a second out of home campaign.
We're on our third now, actually.
Oh, excuse me, third campaign now, which they seem to get wittier and wittier
100%
as they go.
100%,
and so may their long continue. I think it's gonna the drive home is gonna be more boring. Without a good pineapple.
We've also launched our first radio campaign. I don't know if you've heard our ads.
I haven't heard it yet, but eager to do so.
Yeah, those the content behind those, you'll love them.
Okay,
you'll love.
Amazing. I mean, it's bringing such a fresh just message and manner, I guess, to all of these different channels that are typically more traditional and very, very stereotypical.
Yeah.
Talk to us very quickly, and down the few minutes we've got left.
Yeah.
Where is in Pineapple today, and where is Pineapple going to be in the next 12 months? What's the short-term vision for the business? And what do we have to look forward to?
So where Pineapple is today is we are, on the trek towards becoming a household brand in the short-term insurance space. Our goal is that we want to get to a point whereby when somebody thinks short-term insurance, they think Pineapple as a go-to insurance provider who can meet their needs. Same way how currently, if you think insurance, you're probably thinking Outsurance as the first brand that comes to mind. We want to be that brand that comes to the top of your mind and is at the top of your mental shopping cart when it comes to looking for a quote. That's our goal for Pineapple. We want to also grow our footprints in the South African market. There's an incredible amount of opportunity in the short-term insurance space still in South Africa, particularly in the vehicle space. An overwhelming majority of vehicles on our road are not insured. There's still a lot of the pie to go around to all the insurance providers. So that's our goal, to become a household brand in the short-term insurance space in SA and to grow the brand.
Unbelievable. And I'm sure some exciting announcements and fundraising and team growth and all the stuff that come with that. And
100%.
we, of course, wish you all the best.
Yeah.
Tell me very quickly, and one of the, I guess, outro questions we like to ask all of the founders on the show is, what does success look like for Nda? Come 50 years' time when you're sitting on the stoep, or maybe you're on a desert island, is it Is it a super yacht and a mansion? What's the big why behind building this business, and what success might look like for you?
The biggest why for me is access. There's an overwhelming percentage of our population that don't have access to the safety net that insurance provides, either through the insurance products just being too complex and not easily understandable by your layman on the streets, either through a lack of access to the actual technology that can actually help you purchase insurance cover for what's important to you, either through price, through use of language and so forth. So access for me is a very important thing. I want Pineapple to get to a place whereby we are able to offer alternative insurance products to people who otherwise have been priced out of the industry, or who have been acknowledged in terms of sort of the barrier of entry, in terms of understanding these products and so forth. I really want us to be able to build products that can speak to these individuals and sort of give them an opportunity to get these safety nets, because insurance is a beautiful thing. The safety net that insurance provides for you, it's incredible. I mean, if you're using your vehicle, to supplement your income, or if you're using your cell phone to supplement your income, you losing that item can literally be the difference between you feeding your family or you going hungry for the next few months. So I think from a business point of view, that's what success looks like. But from a personal point of view, I've always been somebody, especially when it comes to being an entrepreneur, I don't believe in the idea that an entrepreneur is characterized as somebody who has a sort of bullyish sort of attitude, or who has like a cutthroat sort of attitude, similar to like your Elon Musk, or the type of person who will just fire you if you have an off day. I don't believe that that's the archetype of what an entrepreneur can only be. I genuinely believe that you can be compassionate, you can be understanding, and still hold people accountable, but in a way that makes them feel sort of heard and makes them feel understood. I just want to sort of prove to people that you can be true to yourself and still be an entrepreneur. You don't have to just subscribe to what Hollywood says an entrepreneur should look like. Entrepreneurs get we have self-doubts. We have moments where we're self-conscious, and I feel as though popular culture tends to hide that part of entrepreneurship away, but I embrace it fully. I'm not afraid to say, okay, I don't understand this. If somebody asks me a question that I don't understand, I'm not afraid to say, hey guys, listen, I need to give me about 30 minutes just to gather my thoughts and sort of really think about sort of my next move. Entrepreneurship it's not a one size, fits all shoe. Entrepreneurs come in different shapes and forms. So I just want to, from a personal point of view, I just want to prove that you can be human and still be an entrepreneur and be true to yourself.
It's a beautiful mission. I think commercially you're the right team on the right trajectory with the right purpose, and seemingly gonna conquer this space, if not South Africa, to Africa and the world as well. And then personally, you just seem like the right guy to do this and to prove that point. So we obviously wish you the utmost success, and we'll be watching very closely and following your journey. But it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show today. Thank you so much for your time. And I'm sure we'll be seeing a lot more of you and Pineapple very soon.
Thank you so much, Matthew. And once again, I appreciate you inviting me to your platform and giving me the opportunity to share not only my story, but the Pineapple story as well. Thank you.
Thank you, mate. Thank you for listening to today's episode. That was Ngulube, co-founder of Pineapple Insurance. I'm Mathew Marsden, and if you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to subscribe to our channel, follow us on our socials, and share with your network. See you next time.